Albania's history dates back to ancient Illyria, with powerful tribes and a rich culture. It was conquered by the Romans in 168 BC, becoming part of the Roman Empire. After the fall of Rome, Albania was ruled by the Byzantine and Ottoman empires. In 1912, Albania declared independence from the Ottoman Empire. The 20th century saw communist rule, with Albania isolated from the world. In 1991, communism ended, and Albania transitioned to a democracy, becoming a member of NATO in 2009.
Campaign. What is now Albania became a part of a Roman region called Illyricum, and it was a lot better behaved under the Roman heel. In fact, a number of Illyrians would go on to become Roman emperors, including Aurelian, Diocletian, and Constantine the Great. With the fall of the beleaguered Western Roman Empire in 476, Albania remained an empire. Albania 9. Byzantine historian Michael Italiatis mentions the word Albanians for the first time in history that all historians Albanians for the first time in the 2nd century, however, the geographer Ptolemy referred to an Illyrian tribe called the Albanoi, which some weakened. Then Trogon arose and established an independent state that lasted till the mid-1200s. Then the Serbs came along and conquered Albania, ruling it till their empire fell. Albania found itself split under the when the people thought they could relax. The Ottoman Turks invaded. Enter Skanderbeg, perhaps the greatest Albanian of all. This commander and military genius severely impeded Ottoman progression into Western Europe, while also uniting the divided Albanian people and instilling in them a sense of national consciousness and identity. His many victories over much larger Turkish prime, and he held them back for 24 years. But after Skanderbeg, there was no one to resist the Turkish incursion, and a decade later, the Ottomans came back and conquered it. Many Albanians fled to Italy, and the remaining populace, over the centuries, mostly all slowly converted to Islam. Under Ottoman rule, numerous Albanians rose to positions of great power, such as Ali Pasha. But as with all regions ruled by the Ottomans, in 12, the Albanian people, led by Ismail Kamali, finally declared independence. The great powers, in redrawing the map of Europe, limited Albanian territory, so some 40% of Albanians were left outside Albania's borders, including those of Kosovo. Albania was basically a battlefield during World War I, and in the ensuing years underwent a time of political turbulence that left one Ahmet Zogu in charge. From 1928, he ruled under the strangely sci-fi sounding name of King Zog, and introduced reforms, banned Sharia law, and allied with fascist Italy. Now, Albanian economic dependence on Italy began to bother Mr. Mussolini, who decided it would be better if Italians ran the show, so Italy invaded in April 1939 and took over. 2 years later, the Albanian Communist Party was formed, and a school teacher named Enver Hoxha soon became top dog. A few years later, after a violent civil war, the Communist Party gained control with Hoxha at the helm. With characteristic haste, the Communists began an enormous purge of suspected enemies. Rich people had their money and property confiscated, factories and mines were nationalized, and so on. Albania was poised to merge with communist Yugoslavia, but when that Balkan Union broke from the Soviets in 1948, Albania sided with the USSR and Stalin, who sent much-needed economic aid. After Stalin died and Khrushchev wanted to de-Stalinize things, Albania was upset, and rather than reform, it looked to the stern and more Stalinesque China under Mao. Soviet aid was stopped, and Chinese aid began. In 1967, Communist Albania declared itself the world's first atheist state. Mosques and churches were shut, and if you dared to worship God in any way, you would be thrown into prison. But when, in the 1970s, China and America became less hostile to each other, Albania and China broke up, so to speak. Albania struggled along in poverty and political corruption until the Communist Party lost power in 1990. And though inexperienced in capitalism and still flirting with dubiously beneficial socialist politics, signs seem to indicate improvement for Albania. What do you think? Comment below, but for now.
इमेजिन करिए एक बूढ़ी औरत सफेद साड़ी पहने, चेहरे पे झुर्रियां, आंखों में प्यार और करुणा के साथ एक बच्चे को गोद में उठाती है और उसके माथे को चूमकर कहती है, ईश्वर की शक्ति से मैं दुनिया के सबसे गरीब और असहाय लोगों की सेवा करूंगी। सैन फ्रांसिस्को से लेकर भारत तक उनको अपने हाथों से गरीब लोगों को खाना खिलाते और बीमार लोगों की सेवा करते देखकर लोग इमोशनल हो जाते थे। लेकिन वही दूसरी तरफ कुछ लोगों की आंखों में इस औरत के लिए नफरत भी थी। गुस्से से जलती हुई उनकी आंखें इस इमेज के पीछे की डार्कनेस को साफ देख सकती थी। आज तक हमें मदर टेरेसा की जो कहानी सुनाई गई वो अधूरी थी। मदर टेरेसा की असली सच्चाई कुछ और ही थी जो शायद बहुत कम लोग जानते हैं। गरीबी बहुत सुंदर होती है। ये सब किसी अमीर इंसान के नहीं थे, बल्कि मदर टेरेसा के थे। वही मदर टेरेसा जिन्होंने अपनी पूरी जिंदगी को गरीबों की सेवा के लिए समर्पित बताया था। सन 1943 बंगाल का भयानक अकाल, जहाँ लाखों लोग भूख से तड़प तड़प कर मर रहे थे। इसी समय एक रोमन कैथोलिक नन मदर टेरेसा ईश्वर के नाम पर एक वादा करती है कि मैं गरीब लोगों के बीच रहकर उनकी सेवा करूंगी और इस राह से कभी पीछे नहीं हटूंगी। उन्होंने एक संस्था बनाई, मिशनरीज ऑफ चैरिटी, जहाँ पर अनाथ, गरीब, बेघर और बीमार लोगों की मदद की जाती। लोग उनकी इस सेवा भावना से इतने इम्प्रेस्ड हो गए कि उन्हें दुनिया भर से करोड़ों डॉलर का डोनेशन मिलने लगा। उनकी इमेज एक देवी जैसी बना दी। लेकिन क्या इस कहानी का सिर्फ यही पहलू था? आखिर क्यों कुछ लोग उन्हें एंजल ऑफ हेवन की जगह एंजल ऑफ हेल कहने लगे? सन 1994 में एक जर्नलिस्ट क्रिस्टोफर हिचेंस ने एक डॉक्यूमेंट्री बनाई जिसमें उन्होंने मदर टेरेसा के बारे में कुछ ऐसे खुलासे किए जो काफी शॉकिंग थे। मदर टेरेसा की संस्था को दुनिया भर के सबसे अमीर लोगों और सरकारों से अरबों रुपए का डोनेशन मिला, लेकिन इन पैसों का यूज गरीबों के इलाज के लिए बिल्कुल नहीं किया गया। चार्ल्स किटिंग, जो कि अमेरिका का एक बहुत बड़ा क्रिमिनल है, उसने भी लाखों लोगों से पैसे लूटकर मदर टेरेसा को डोनेशन दिया। और जब किटिंग पर मुकदमा चला तो मदर टेरेसा ने उसको सपोर्ट करने के लिए उसके लिए एक लेटर लिखा। लेकिन जब कोर्ट ने मदर टेरेसा से पूछा कि आप किटिंग के पैसे वापस लौटाने के लिए तैयार हैं, तो उन्होंने इस बारे में कभी जवाब ही नहीं दिया। हाइती के क्रूर तानाशाह जिन क्लाउड डुवेलियर, जिसने हजारों लोगों को मरवाया, उसने भी मदर टेरेसा को लाखों डॉलर का डोनेशन दिया। अब तक आप लोग सोच रहे होंगे कि चलो पैसे का तो कोई हिसाब किताब नहीं है, लेकिन कम से कम उन्होंने बीमार लोगों की तो मदद की है ना। लेकिन इसकी सच्चाई काफी डरावनी है। मिशनरीज ऑफ चैरिटी के हॉस्पिटल्स में इलाज नहीं किया जाता था, बल्कि इलाज के नाम पर सिर्फ उनसे प्रेयर करवाई जाती थी, क्योंकि वहाँ पर मेडिसिन और मेडिकल इक्विपमेंट ही मौजूद नहीं थे, जबकि उनका फंड अरबों डॉलर था। यहाँ तक की बीमारी से तड़पते हुए मरीजों को कोई दवा नहीं दी जाती, क्योंकि मदर टेरेसा मानती थी कि दर्द सहना भी ईश्वर के करीब जाने का एक तरीका है। और वहाँ के कई डॉक्टर्स ने रिपोर्ट दी कि मरीजों को यूज किए हुए इंजेक्शन लगाए जाते, जिससे इन्फेक्शन और ज्यादा बढ़ जाता। अब सवाल ये उठता है कि क्या उनकी सेवा सच में एक चैरिटी थी या फिर लोगों का धर्म परिवर्तन करवाने की एक सीक्रेट स्ट्रेटेजी? मिशनरीज ऑफ चैरिटी के कई पूर्व कर्मचारियों ने बताया कि वहाँ मरीजों का इलाज करने से ज्यादा उन्हें क्रिश्चियन बनाने पर जोर दिया जाता। और मदर टेरेसा ने खुद अपने एक इंटरव्यू में कहा था कि मैं गरीबों की सेवा नहीं करती, बल्कि मैं उन्हें यीशु के करीब लाने का काम करती हूँ। मदर टेरेसा लोगों को तो दर्द सहने की सलाह देती, लेकिन जब खुद की बारी आती तो महंगे हॉस्पिटल्स में अपना इलाज करवाती। तो फिर क्या सच में मदर टेरेसा एक संत थी या फिर एक स्क्रिप्टेड इमेज जो सिर्फ हमें दिखाने के लिए बनाई गई थी? अब डिसीजन आपका है, आपको इस बारे में क्या लगता है? दैट्स इट फॉर दिस वीडियो गाइस। कैसे आपके फेवरेट क्रिकेटर्स आपको बर्बाद कर रहे हैं? अगर आपको ये जानना है तो आप इस वाली वीडियो को क्लिक करके देख सकते हो।
The news just in. Albania is no longer a Muslim majority country, according to the most recent Albanian conducted census, that is. But what does that really mean, actually? And why are some Christians trying to portray the news in a way that shows their dying religion as flourishing? Let's unpack it a little bit, and let's begin by understanding the traditional religious structure of Albania. For centuries during the Ottoman rule, Islam flourished in the country, and it became the dominant religion. Albania has a Christian minority consisting of Orthodox Christians, but also including Catholics and Protestants. But more than that, anyone who's been in contact with Albanian Muslims knows that Albanians are usually really devout, hard-working Muslims who take their religion seriously. So what's with the recent news? According to the latest census data, there's been a notable shift. The numbers tell us that Muslims now make up approximately 45.7%. When we consider the image Albania has and the reputation of Albanian Muslims, the news is absolutely shocking. But is it even true? Before we answer that, we must talk about the two groups that are already partying and rejoicing about the news: secularists and, of course, some Christians. Secularists realize that Islam is the only religion resisting their attacks on faith, so they naturally rejoice every single time there is news that may suggest that Muslim countries are about to leave Islam. And it is true that because of the way secularism was forcefully shoved down the throats of so many Muslim populations, that poison is unfortunately growing in our countries. Some Christians, on the other hand, are relaying the news and pretending that the reason for the decline of Islam in Albania is the rise of Christianity, which of course is bogus, since even in the recent Albanian census, the Christians are still a minority, with atheists and agnostics being higher. The first thing to consider is that the emigration of the Albanian Muslims has been tremendous in the recent past, and thus many of the devout, hard-working people we mentioned earlier actually left the country to work in other European nations and elsewhere. In these countries, in addition to working and raising families, they also built Hanafi masjids that are highly frequented.
Recently, I visited one of the oldest masjids in Toronto, the Albanian Muslim Society. It was founded in around 1957, and when I went inside, I was blown away by how amazing the community was, how welcoming they were. And when I went for the iftar, unfortunately, the food was so good, I just couldn't take any videos of it. But overall, the Tarawih experience was amazing. Very welcoming people. I will definitely visit this masjid again.
Many Albanians, especially those from Muslim backgrounds, have chosen to emigrate in search of better economic opportunities. This emigration trend has led to a decline in the overall Muslim population in the country. This alone is a reason that may justify the Muslim population of Albania declining, but actually it shouldn't even be necessary to go that far, as anyone visiting Albania could tell you that Islam is still very much alive in the country, despite the murderous attempts to destroy it.
I was surprised to see the diversity of the Ummah and how large the Jumu'ah had become. And I also noticed when I exited that I was in the wrong room. I wasn't near the Imam, but that door wasn't open when I walked in. I feel bad because I want to be as close to the Imam as possible. When I walked outside, they had green carpets for people to pray on.
Not unlike Turkey, Albania is a Muslim country where Islam survived despite the attempts to root it out. And like Turkey, the deen is now growing again. And it is why the recent Albanian census simply cannot be taken seriously, and the only people relaying it as actual news are either ignorant or malicious and trying to portray their false ideology as winning over Islam. You see, it is common news that the Albanian census cannot be trusted since it constantly contradicts the far more renowned Pew Survey. In the past, the Pew Survey placed Muslims at 70 to 80%, while the Albanian census placed them at 56% the very same year. One of the reasons is believed to be a fear by the Albanian Authority to let Albania appear as a Muslim country in order to better fit in Europe. Past censuses before the country was destroyed by communism did indeed have Islam way higher, and while we can assume that communism did have an impact on the Muslim communities, the Albanian census numbers not only do not match up the most reputable numbers, but they do not match the reality of Islam growing in Albania. The Albanian Muslims actually criticized the census and deemed it highly inaccurate. In short, Albanians are for sure worthy of the reputation of being steadfast, and despite the communist and secularist poison, the deen is coming back to Albania. And it may not be long before Islam becomes political in Albania, and the country is criticized by the West, just like Turkey is being criticized for trying to revive Islam in the land of the Ottomans.